The bet was worth $200, and I didn't even know I was part of it until my mouth was already on hers. My name is Jake Hollis. I'm 27. I install home security systems for a living, which means I spend most of my day telling nervous homeowners that no, their doorbell camera did not catch a ghost. It caught their cat. Simple job, simple life. The kind of life where the biggest surprise in a given week is a client asking me to explain motion sensitivity settings for the fourth time. Up until that Friday night, Bailey Reyes had been exactly one thing to me for 13 years, my sister's best friend. She had been at every sleepover, every prom pregame, every Thanksgiving table since she was 14 years old. She called my dad Mr. H, like it was a nickname instead of a formality. She knew where we kept the spare key before some of our actual cousins did. She was furniture, the good kind, the kind you stop noticing is even furniture because it's just always been there holding the room together. She grew up. She moved 2 states over for a marketing job right after college, came back a couple years ago, sharper around the edges, a little more careful with what she let people see. Still funny, still loud when she wanted to be. But there was a version of her underneath the version everyone got, and I'd noticed it without ever letting myself think too hard about what noticing meant. That Friday, my sister Dana was hosting one of her backyard bonfire nights, the kind with string lights and a cooler full of drinks nobody asked permission to bring. I came by because Dana needed someone to haul the extra folding chairs down from the garage attic, and because free food is free food. I was still in my work polo, smelling faintly like drywall dust, when Bailey walked through the side gate in a denim jacket and a laugh already halfway out of her mouth at something on her phone. She saw me stacking chairs and grinned. Look at that, Jake Hollis doing manual labor on a Friday night. It's chairs, Bailey, not a coal mine. Still counts as effort. I'm impressed. She dropped into one of the chairs I'd just set up and watched me finish the rest, like it was the evening's entertainment. That wasn't new. Bailey had always watched me the way you watch something familiar and unremarkable. No real weight to it, no real stakes. The fire got going around 8. Dana's friends trickled in the way they always did. 6 people who turned into 14 without anyone officially inviting the extra 8. I grabbed a beer and settled into the outer ring of chairs, half listening to an argument about whether a hot dog counts as a sandwich. Watching Bailey across the fire laugh at something someone said, her hair catching the orange light in a way I noticed, and then made myself stop noticing. What was new happened about 2 hours later, after the fire had burned down to something more orange than yellow, and most of Dana's friends had thinned out to the 6 or 7 who never leave until someone makes them. Bailey came and sat next to me on the cooler. Closer than she usually sat. "Can I tell you something humiliating?" she said. "You already are. Might as well finish it." She laughed, but it didn't last. When she looked at me again, there was something tighter behind her eyes. "Dana's friend Marcus," she said. "The one who's always got something to say." I knew exactly who she meant. Marcus was the kind of guy who treated every conversation like a competition he'd already decided he won. What did he do? He made a bet with his friends, about me. She picked at the label on her bottle instead of looking at me. Apparently there's a running joke that I've never actually been with anyone here, that I just tag along to things and never get picked. Someone said I probably wouldn't even know how to act if a guy actually kissed me for real, not just as a joke. Marcus put $200 on it. Said I'd never prove them wrong tonight. My jaw tightened before I even decided it should. "That's disgusting." "It's stupid," she agreed. "And normally I wouldn't care." But Dana overheard it and told me, and now I can't stop thinking about it. And the worst part is, I know exactly who's going to be watching all night, waiting to see if I sit alone by the fire like I always do. I could feel where this was going before she said it, but I let her get there on her own. "I need you to kiss me," Bailey said, finally looking at me straight on. "Right here, in front of everyone, so Marcus loses his stupid bet and shuts up for good. Not a big thing. Just enough that it's obviously real and not staged." I nearly choked on my beer. "You want me to kiss you?" "I want you to help me humiliate a grown man over $200, she said. "Is that so much to ask?" "That's an oddly specific favor." "I'm an oddly specific person when I'm angry." I laughed. And for a second, the tension eased. Then she looked at me with something more serious underneath the joke. "I know it's weird," she said. "You're basically my brother by proximity, but I don't trust anyone else here not to make it a whole thing afterward. You wouldn't do that. Brother by proximity. I'd never once thought of myself that way, not really, but hearing her say it out loud twisted something in my chest I didn't examine too closely. "What exactly does this involve?" I asked. "Not much," she said quickly. "We just need it to look real for about 10 seconds. Long enough that nobody in that group can go home tonight and say it looked fake. And if it doesn't come up, if Marcus doesn't say anything, he'll say something," she said, with the flat certainty of someone who'd known a person a long time. "He can't help himself. He'll find a way to bring it up before the night's over. He always does." I looked at her for a second. Really looked. The way you look at someone you've known your whole life but somehow never actually studied. She had her hair down that night, which she rarely did at these things, and there was a nervous energy underneath her usual sharp exterior that I wasn't used to seeing. "All right," I said. "I'm in." Bailey blinked, like she hadn't expected me to actually say yes. "Really? Really. But if we're doing this, we're doing it right. No half version. If Marcus is going to lose $200, he's going to lose it convincingly." She smiled then, a real one, the kind I hadn't seen on her in years. "Thank you," she said. "I mean it." "Don't thank me yet," I said. "You haven't seen how convincing I can be." I should have known right then I was in trouble. I just wasn't ready to admit it. We didn't do it immediately. That would have looked staged, and Bailey was specific about that in the quiet conversation nobody else at the fire knew we were having. We waited almost 20 minutes, moved back into the group like nothing had happened, and let the conversation drift naturally. Marcus was 2 chairs down, holding court about something nobody had asked him about, glancing over at Bailey every few minutes with the smug look of a man counting money he hadn't earned yet. Then Dana, completely unaware of the storm she was about to set off, said something about how it had been forever since Bailey had actually dated anyone. It was an innocent comment. Dana didn't know about the bet. But Marcus's head turned just slightly at that, and I saw the exact moment his smile sharpened. "Yeah," he said, not quite looking at Bailey, but close enough that it landed. Bailey's always been more of a watch from the sidelines type. The fire crackled. A couple of people laughed, not cruelly, just the easy laugh of people who don't know they're standing in the middle of something. Bailey's shoulders went stiff beside me. I didn't wait for her to answer him. I turned toward her, put my hand along her jaw, and kissed her. It was supposed to be quick, convincing enough to shut the comment down, brief enough to stay exactly inside the lines we'd drawn by the cooler. That was the plan. The plan didn't survive contact. The second my mouth met hers, Bailey's hand came up and closed around my wrist, not pulling away, not performing for the group around the fire, but holding on like something in her had stopped acting the moment it started. I forgot about Marcus. I forgot about the bet, the fire, the string lights, the 6 or 7 people gone quiet around us. There was just Bailey, warm and real, kissing me back like she meant every second of it. And for a few seconds that felt a great deal longer than a few seconds, nothing else existed at all. When we finally broke apart, nobody said anything right away. Marcus had gone quiet. Somewhere behind us I heard Dana's voice, flat with disbelief, say, "Okay, what did I miss?" Bailey looked at me, breathless, her eyes wide with something that looked a lot like the same confusion sitting in my own chest. "That was supposed to be for Marcus," she said quietly. "I know," I said. "It didn't feel like it was for Marcus." "I know that too." Marcus cleared his throat somewhere behind us, mumbling something about how he guessed he owed somebody $200. Neither of us looked at him. Bailey's eyes stayed on mine, searching, and I let her find whatever she was looking for because I wasn't hiding it anymore. "We should go," she said softly. "Yeah," I agreed. "We should." We told Dana we were grabbing something from the kitchen and never came back to the fire. We ended up on the front steps instead, away from the noise, away from Marcus and his wallet and his bruised pride. Bailey sat down first, wrapping her arms around her knees, staring at the dark street like it had answers. "I need to say something," she said. "And I need you to not make it weird. When have I ever made things weird?" "I'm serious, Jake." I sat down beside her. "Say it." She took a breath. "That kiss wasn't part of the plan. I mean, it was, technically, but somewhere in the middle of it I stopped thinking about Marcus entirely." I stopped thinking about the bet, the fire, any of it. I was just thinking about you. My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the cold air and everything to do with hope. I've been thinking about you for longer than tonight, I admitted. I just didn't let myself notice it, because you're Dana's best friend, and that always felt like a line I wasn't supposed to cross. Lines can move, Bailey said quietly. Can they? I just moved one in front of a bonfire, and 40 of Dana's co-workers, she said. I think we're past worrying about lines. I laughed, some of the tension finally breaking loose. So what happens now? I don't know, she admitted. I wasn't planning past the part where Marcus loses his money. Well, I said, I'd like to take you somewhere that isn't a backyard on fire. That got a real laugh out of her, the kind that carried like where? I don't know yet. Somewhere I actually planned. Somewhere that isn't a bet and isn't a conversation about whether we meant it. She studied me for a second. Okay, she said. Ask me properly then. I will, when I've figured out where. She smiled, stood up, and said she should probably get back before Dana sent a search party. I watched her walk back through the gate and sat on those steps another 20 minutes by myself, replaying every second of it like I was trying to memorize something I was scared to lose. For the next 2 weeks, we didn't talk much, not really. A few texts here and there, the kind that skimmed the surface on purpose. How's work? Did Marcus ever pay Dana back for the story of what happened? Did your mom finally fix the ice maker? Nothing about the porch. Nothing about the 10 seconds that had rearranged something in my chest without asking permission first. I told myself that was fine. That was the deal, technically, even if the deal had never really been said out loud past the fire. Once, shut Marcus up, back to normal. I was a grown man who could compartmentalize a single kiss from a woman I'd known half my life. I was very good at lying to myself. She called on a Tuesday night, almost 10 o'clock, her voice a little quieter than usual. Hey, she said, are you busy? Not even a little. What's up? There was a pause on the line, long enough that I could hear the hum of her apartment in the background. A television turned low. I keep thinking about the fire, she said finally. Not the best part. Not Marcus. Just the part where you kissed me, and I forgot to be embarrassed about any of it. I sat down on the edge of my bed, phone pressed hard against my ear. I haven't stopped thinking about it either. That's the problem, she said, and I could hear the small, nervous laugh underneath it. I told myself it was going to be this one clean, contained thing I could use and set down. And I haven't been able to set it down. It's been sitting in my chest for 2 weeks like something I don't actually want removed. My hand tightened around the phone. Bailey, I'm not asking you for anything, she said quickly, the old defensive reflex kicking in. I just needed to say it out loud to somebody. And you're the somebody it's about. I haven't set it down either, I said. I've replayed 10 seconds on that porch more times than I've replayed anything in my entire life. And I keep telling myself it's because it was unexpected. I know that's not the real reason. She went quiet. The real reason, I said, is that I've been looking at you for 13 years the way you look at furniture. You stopped noticing it's even there. And apparently, my brain decided that particular Friday was the moment to notice all over again. Her breath caught audibly through the phone. Say that again? Slower. I like you, Bailey. Not in a Dana's brother way. Not in a favor way. I think I've liked you for longer than either of us wants to admit, and that kiss just knocked the dust off something that was already there. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Long enough that I started to panic. Sure, I'd said too much. Wrecked something simple and safe that had held for over a decade. Then she said, I'm coming over. What? It's 10 at night. I know what time it is, Jake. I need to see your face when you say that again. I hung up, stood there staring at my phone for a few seconds like a man who didn't fully believe what he'd just heard, and then went and turned my porch light on, because it felt like the kind of thing you were supposed to do. 20 minutes later, her headlights swept across my driveway. She got out of the car, still in her sweatpants, hair pulled back loose, moving up my front walk, like a woman who'd made a decision somewhere around a stoplight 3 blocks back and had no interest in reversing it. Say it again, she said, stopping a few feet from me. I like you more than the bet, more than the favor, more than both of those things combined, I said, taking a step closer. I've liked you since before I had the nerve to admit it to myself. I think some stupid part of me has been waiting for a reason as ridiculous as a $200 bet to finally say it out loud. Her eyes were bright, and for a second I thought she might cry. Instead, she laughed, short and disbelieving, the sound of someone who'd been braced for a different answer her whole life and didn't know what to do with a good one. "I asked you to kiss me to embarrass Marcus," she said. "I didn't expect it to be the thing that scared me more than he ever did." Scared how? Scared because it was real. It wasn't a favor. It felt like something I'd been avoiding for years without knowing it had a name. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see she hadn't even bothered to put on shoes. "So what are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying I don't want it to be once anymore," she said, her voice dropping softer. "I want to know what it's like when it's not a bet, when it's just us. No Marcus to prove wrong, no excuse to hide behind." I reached out and tucked a piece of wind-blown hair behind her ear. The same motion I'd probably wanted to make 100 times over 13 years without ever letting myself notice the wanting. "Then let's find out," I said. This time when I kissed her, there was no fire, no cooler, no bet hanging over either of our heads. It was slower, surer, the kind of kiss that isn't trying to prove anything to a room full of strangers. Just two people finally admitting what had been sitting quietly between them for over a decade. We took it slow after that, the way people do when they've stumbled into something they didn't plan but both clearly wanted. Real dates, the kind we should have had years ago if either of us had been brave enough. I took her to a little diner 2 towns over the following Saturday, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that never runs out, and we sat there for almost 3 hours talking about things that mattered and things that didn't. The way you do when you've suddenly got permission to actually pay attention to someone you've known forever. She told me about the marketing job 2 states over, how she'd taken it mostly because staying home felt like standing still, and how funny it was that coming back to stand still was the thing that finally moved her forward. I told her about the ice maker at my parents' house, about work, about the particular kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people your whole life, and still managing to miss the one thing sitting right in front of you. "I think you noticed me a long time before that fire," she said, stirring her coffee. "You just got very good at looking away." "I did," I admitted. "I told myself it was easier that way, less to lose if I never said anything. And now? Now I think the losing was happening either way. I just wasn't paying attention to what." She smiled at that, the real one, the kind she'd never bothered performing for anyone else. "Can I ask you something?" she said, turning her mug slowly in her hands. "You can always ask. What were you thinking, right before you kissed me at the fire, before Marcus even opened his mouth?" I thought about it for a second, because I wanted to give her the real answer instead of the easy one. I was thinking that I'd spent 13 years finding reasons not to do the one thing I actually wanted to do, and I was tired of being the guy who found reasons. She was quiet for a moment, turning that over. "I was thinking something similar," she admitted. "I was thinking, please don't make this a joke." I was so tired of being the girl nobody picked, and I think some part of me needed it to be you specifically, not because it was convenient, but because you were the only person I could imagine actually meaning it. "I meant it," I said. "For what it's worth, I haven't stopped meaning it since." "Good," she said, and there was nothing fragile in her voice at all, because I don't think I could survive being wrong about this twice. The diner filled up a little around us, the after-dinner crowd drifting in for pie and coffee refills, and neither of us moved. We stayed until the waitress started giving us the polite look that means closing time is approaching, and even then we took the long way back to the car, her hand finding its way into mine, like it had always belonged there and had simply been waiting for the right excuse to show up. Dana found out before we even got past the appetizers of telling her properly. She showed up at my apartment 2 days after the diner, arms crossed, dish towel still somehow in her hand, like she'd walked straight over mid-chore. "I need you to understand that I have eyes," she said, "and those eyes have questions." "It's a long story," I said. "I have time," she said. "Also, if this is a joke, it is not funny, because I will actually lose my mind." "It's not a joke," Bailey said from the kitchen doorway, and Dana's head whipped toward her like she'd forgotten Bailey might actually be there too. Dana looked at Bailey, then at me, then back at Bailey, doing the kind of math that only a lifelong best friend, and a lifelong sister could do at the same time. Finally, she said, "If you hurt her, I will tell every embarrassing story about you I have been saving since we were kids. And I have a lot of them." "Understood," I said. "Seriously, Jake. Seriously, Dana, I know what this is. I'm not treating it like less than that." She studied me a long moment, then nodded once, the closest thing to a blessing I was going to get that afternoon, and went back to whatever chore she'd abandoned to come yell at us. 6 months in, we told my parents over Sunday dinner, half expecting some kind of awkward reaction, given the sheer amount of history sitting behind the announcement. Instead, my mother just looked between us and said, "Finally," like she'd been waiting years for the two of us to catch up to something she'd figured out a long time ago. My father, without looking up from his plate, said, "Good, she's been around long enough. Might as well make it official," which was as close to a speech as the man had ever given about anything. Marcus texted Bailey once, weeks later, some half-hearted apology wrapped around a request that she not mention the bet to anyone else at his job. She showed me the message, rolled her eyes, and didn't bother replying. She didn't need anything from him anymore. She never really had. A year after that bonfire, I asked Bailey to marry me, on the same front porch where the whole thing started, string lights still hanging from a party that had happened a dozen times since. I hadn't planned some elaborate speech. I just told her the truth, that 13 years of not saying something had turned into one Friday night that finally made me say all of it, and that I didn't want to spend another 13 pretending I hadn't. She said yes before I even finished the sentence, laughing through tears, telling me I'd ruined a perfectly good proposal by rushing it. Now, when people ask how we got together, Bailey tells them the short version. He kissed me to win a bet, and I always add the rest. She kissed me back as she meant it. Both parts are true. Only one of them explains why we're still together. Would you have done the same thing if your sister's best friend asked you to kiss her just once to win a bet? And have you ever done someone a favor that turned into the biggest thing that ever happened to you? Tell me your story in the comments. If this one stayed with you, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.